Anne, the Princess Royal, is King Charles's younger sister. She has been the Colonel of the Blues and Royal's British Army Regiment since 1998 and was later granted the title of Gold Stick in Waiting for Charles. Since the 1400s, the Gold Stick has been traditionally responsible for keeping the monarch safe.
In a moment that stunned the world, King Charles was forced to kneel before Scottish elders, as millions demanded Princess Anne be crowned Queen of Scotland. What began as a quiet petition turned into a nationwide uprising, shaking the monarchy to its core. Protesters flooded the streets. Politicians backed the people. And behind closed doors, Camilla broke down, screaming that Charles had handed the crown to his sister. From secret meetings to viral chants of "Anne for Queen," Scotland is rewriting royal history. And now one question echoes across the UK. Is the crown breaking apart from the inside? Scotland's uprising, the petition that rocked the palace. It started as a murmur, then turned into a roar that shook the crown. In early 2025, a viral petition out of Scotland surged past 2.4 million signatures, calling for something no one had dared suggest in modern history: Princess Anne as Queen of Scotland. The petition exploded after King Charles failed to acknowledge key Scottish issues during a televised UK address. He spoke of unity, but skipped Scotland almost entirely. That silence lit the spark. Within days, crowds gathered outside Holyrood, waving banners that read, "Anne for Alba," and "Our Queen, not yours." At first, palace officials dismissed it as a fringe movement. But it didn't stay fringe for long. Scottish MPs began to voice support. Former military generals, historians, and even beloved Scottish actors backed the call for Anne. "It's not rebellion, it's restoration," said one respected elder. This wasn't just symbolic, it was political, it was personal, and it was growing. The chants grew louder. "We don't want Charles, we want Anne." One royal insider admitted, "This petition isn't just about preference, it's a vote of no confidence." What began as a protest now threatened to rip the crown in two. And the palace? Completely unprepared. Princess Anne's secret meeting with Scottish leaders. She arrived quietly. No photographers, no royal fanfare. But her presence in Edinburgh didn't go unnoticed. Princess Anne attended a private dinner with Scotland's First Minister, a meeting the palace later called routine. But sources inside the room told a very different story. Anne, known for her blunt honesty and duty-first mindset, was reportedly deeply attentive to Scotland's case for a unique path forward. One senior official said, "She didn't make promises, but she didn't shut it down either." The words that changed everything? According to multiple insiders, Anne told the room, "I serve the people. Titles be damned." That quote is now printed on placards, posters, and even carved into stone in the streets of Edinburgh. While Buckingham Palace scrambled to downplay the dinner, constitutional experts called it the boldest breach of royal neutrality in decades. To many Scots, it wasn't betrayal. It was validation, a quiet nod that they weren't just being heard, they were being respected. One aide close to the king reportedly said, "That dinner was the moment we lost control of the narrative." And Anne? She hasn't said a word publicly since. But she doesn't need to. Scotland is already listening. Charles's approval ratings collapse north of the border. He may be King of the United Kingdom, but in Scotland, Charles's crown is cracking. New polling in 2025 revealed a historic collapse. Charles's approval rating in Scotland dropped to 14%, the lowest for any reigning monarch since before the Act of Union in 1707. The breaking point: his decision to strip several Scottish ceremonial traditions from the upcoming Jubilee celebrations. What the palace saw as modernization, Scots called cultural erasure. Charles didn't help himself. When Highland leaders requested a meeting to express their concerns, he refused, calling the movement a distraction. That single word, distraction, was replayed in protest speeches, tweets, and newspapers for weeks. Even inside the palace walls, senior aides sounded alarms. "He's losing the North," one whispered, "and once that's gone, what's left?" In Scottish pubs, public halls, and even schools, the conversation shifted. It wasn't if Scotland would turn its back on Charles, it was when. Anne, by contrast, continued her quiet work. She opened rural hospitals, she met farmers, she listened. The contrast couldn't be clearer. While Charles was seen sipping champagne in London, Anne was pictured in the Highlands, standing in the rain, smiling beside veterans. The verdict from the public? One rules with titles, the other rules with respect. Princess Anne's wartime reputation versus Charles's luxury image. It's the royal comparison no one at the palace wants to talk about, but everyone in Scotland already is. Princess Anne is everything Charles is not. For over 50 years, Anne has served without complaint. She's earned military honors, shaken hands in war zones, and refused luxury perks. She's flown commercial. She's driven herself. And she's never once made headlines for scandal. Among Scots, she's known as the steady hand. One farmer put it simply, "She's the only one who feels like one of us." Meanwhile, Charles has long been seen, fairly or not, as privileged, pampered, and London-centered. In viral side-by-side videos, Anne is shown riding horseback through a rainstorm, while Charles is seen being gently fanned at a garden party. The contrast is now more than image. It's identity. To rural Scots, Anne represents loyalty, resilience, and hard work. Charles? He's the face of distant rule. And in this rising Scottish movement, identity matters more than bloodline. Even former royal staffers admit, if Anne were on the throne, none of this would be happening. Because in a nation tired of being overlooked, the crown no longer shines on those who demand it. It follows those who earn it. The ceremony that brought Charles to his knees. It was meant to calm the storm, a gesture of goodwill, a symbol of unity between king and kingdom. But by the time it ended, King Charles was on his knees, his crown heavier than ever before. In May 2025, Charles traveled to Balmoral Castle, the ancestral heart of Scotland, for what the palace labeled a unity ceremony. The goal? To soothe the rising unrest, to reconnect, to remind Scotland of its place within the kingdom. But what unfolded was not what he, or the palace, had prepared for. Instead of being welcomed with trumpets and tradition, Charles was led into a solemn, ancient circle of more than 200 Scottish elders, a gathering of clan leaders, historians, veterans, and community voices, many clad in ceremonial Highland dress. In the center of the stone clearing stood a symbol unlike anything seen before, the saltire stone. Freshly carved, it represented Scottish sovereignty, dignity, and ancestral memory. Charles, expecting a speech or ceremonial gift, stood in silence as one elder stepped forward and delivered the unthinkable request. Kneel, not as a ruler, but as a man. Gasps rippled through his security detail. Aides shifted nervously, but outside, the crowd's chants were already rising. Anne for Queen, kneel or leave. For a full 10 seconds, Charles didn't move. Cameras rolled. Protesters pounded drums. The air was thick with history, defiance, and choice. And then he bent. The King of the United Kingdom bowed before Scotland's stone. His voice, low and almost trembling, reportedly whispered, "For Scotland's peace." The moment was captured from 3 angles. Within hours, it was headline news across 6 continents. The kneeling of the king trended across every major platform. Memes flooded in. Op-eds debated what it meant. Some called it humility. Others, total surrender. But to many in Scotland, it was something else entirely. "He bowed because we stood," one tearful protester told reporters, clutching a saltire flag. That moment didn't end a crisis. It started a reckoning. Because when a monarch kneels, the ground beneath the throne begins to shift. And for the British monarchy, everything shifted that day. Queen Camilla's breakdown behind closed doors. Back in London, as Scotland erupted and the footage of King Charles kneeling before the saltire stone circled the globe, Queen Camilla was nowhere to be found. She hadn't attended the Balmoral Unity event by choice. According to insiders, she had refused outright, calling the entire gathering a staged humiliation, a trap, and a disgrace to the crown. But nothing prepared her for what she saw next. As she watched the moment, her husband, the King of England, bowing before a Scottish council, Camilla reportedly stood frozen, eyes wide with disbelief. And then she snapped. Behind closed doors at Clarence House, multiple sources say Camilla screamed at Charles, her voice echoing through the private royal quarters. "You've handed the crown to your sister," she reportedly shouted, shaking with fury.
"Do you have any idea what you've done?"
She accused him of weakness, of betrayal, of losing control of the one thing they had fought so hard to protect, the monarchy's authority. Less than an hour later, Camilla stormed out of Clarence House, refusing any press contact, visibly distressed, and retreating alone to Ray Mill House, her private Wiltshire estate. The fallout was immediate. The royal schedule was wiped clean. Events were cancelled without explanation. Private phone lines went unanswered. For 72 hours, the king and queen didn't speak. Not a word. Not a message. Tabloid headlines exploded. Royal rift at the top. Has the crown broken the queen? Inside palace circles, panic turned to suspicion. Some aides claimed Camilla had never felt more betrayed. Others said she feared Anne's rising influence could make her position irrelevant, if not temporary. "She's not just angry," whispered one veteran courtier. "She's shaken to her core, because what happened at Balmoral wasn't just symbolic. It was a shift in power, and she knows it. This wasn't just about a public misstep. This was a crack in the marriage, a fracture in the monarchy, and a personal humiliation for the woman who once swore she'd never be second to anyone again. And now, for the first time since taking the crown, Camilla feared it might no longer fit. The Parliament shock. Let Scotland choose its monarch. Just when the royal household thought the storm couldn't get any stronger, Parliament dropped a political bomb that rocked the entire foundation of the monarchy. In an unexpected and historic move, a rebel MP from the Scottish National Party introduced a formal proposal in Holyrood. Let Scotland elect its own ceremonial monarch. It wasn't symbolic. It wasn't theatrical. It was serious, and it was real. A motion once laughed off as pure fantasy now stood on official record, staring down Westminster like a challenge 300 years in the making. As the words were read aloud, "Let Scotland choose. Let the people decide their sovereign voice." The chamber reportedly fell into stunned silence. No one interrupted. No one smiled. Because no one knew how to stop what had just begun. The timing couldn't have been worse for Charles. The footage of his bow before the Saltire Stone had just aired worldwide. Newspapers ran headlines like, "The Day the Crown Bent North." Outside Parliament, thousands had already gathered, waving Scottish flags and chanting with fire in their voices, "Anne for Queen, not imposed royalty." Veterans, teachers, students, and elders stood shoulder to shoulder. For the first time, Scotland wasn't just resisting, it was declaring. Even moderate MPs, who once dismissed the idea of a separate Scottish monarch, now said publicly that they were. Deeply moved by the voice of the people. And while the palace maintained its tight-lipped silence, constitutional experts issued dire warnings. If this motion passes, it could fracture the British monarchy for the first time since the Act of Union in 1707. Suddenly, Princess Anne wasn't just a beloved royal aunt in Tartan. She was a contender, a symbol, a queen in waiting, if not by blood, then by will. And in a twist no one predicted, even the SNP, historically anti-monarchy, voiced rare support, calling Anne a unifying figure who transcends politics and truly understands Scotland. They didn't want a ruler forced on them. They wanted a royal who had earned their respect. The message was clear: Charles may still wear the crown. But Scotland had already chosen its queen. The monarchy's next crisis, a crown split in two. Inside Buckingham Palace, panic had turned to full-blown crisis. The once unthinkable was now reality. A kingdom with two crowns. One official, one adored. Royal advisors were divided. Some pushed for Charles to abdicate Scottish sovereignty. Others floated a dual monarch compromise, but most just feared what would come next. Because if Scotland could choose Anne, why couldn't Wales or Northern Ireland? It's not just a Scottish rebellion anymore, one senior royal source admitted. It's a blueprint. And Princess Anne? Still silent, still steady. But those close to her say she's deeply torn, fiercely loyal to her brother, yet moved by the overwhelming love from the Scottish people. One aide whispered, "She didn't ask for this, but she won't turn her back on them." As whispers of abdication swirl and support for Anne only grows, one haunting question now hangs in the air. Can a kingdom survive when one half kneels and the other walks away? King Charles vowed to preserve peace, but what he gave up may haunt the monarchy forever. Scotland's voice is rising, and Princess Anne stands at the center of a storm the firm never saw coming. The crown remains, but who it belongs to now is no longer certain.